At the family party, my son Frank whispered something in my daughter-in-law Laura's ear, something I couldn't hear, something that made her nod slowly, looking towards the stairs. And then, without anyone else noticing, she went up. She disappeared onto the second floor of my house while everyone else laughed downstairs. 40 minutes later, when she came down, she was paler than the tablecloth. Her hands were shaking. She went over to Frank and whispered, "Honey, there's something up there you have to see. I shouldn't have thrown that party. I know that now. But at the time, I just wanted to bring the family together. I wanted everyone under my roof one more time. I wanted to feel like I still had control over something, over someone, because at 66 years old, Eleanor Miller, the only thing I had left was this big house and the memory of what was once my perfect family, or at least what I believed was perfect." That Saturday afternoon, the house smelled like cinnamon and roast beef. I had set the best glasses on the dining room table, the linen napkins I inherited from my mother, the silver cutlery I only used on special occasions. Everything had to be perfect, because Frank was coming, my son, my pride, the only one who was always by my side, the only one who never disappointed me. He and Laura would arrive on time, as always, and I would be ready to welcome them with open arms and a smile that hid the exhaustion of a lifetime spent pretending everything was fine. They arrived at 6 in the evening. Frank brought an expensive bottle of wine, Laura a bouquet of white flowers. They hugged me at the door. I smelled her perfume, something sweet, something that irritated me for no reason, because Laura was always nice to me, too nice, one of those people who smiles even when they don't feel like it, and I never trusted easy smiles, but Frank loved her, and that was enough, or so I told myself every time I saw her walk into my house as if she owned the place. Dinner went smoothly. We talked about trivial things, the weather, Frank's job, the neighbors, about everything and nothing. I served the wine, they complimented the food, everything was polite, everything was civilized, until Frank leaned towards Laura and whispered something. I was serving dessert. My hands stopped. I saw how she nodded. I saw how she got up from the table with a flimsy excuse. "I'm going to the bathroom," she said. But she didn't go to the downstairs bathroom. She went up the stairs. And I knew in that instant that something was wrong. I tried to focus on the conversation. Frank was talking about a new project at work, something about expansion, numbers, contracts. I nodded without really listening. My ears were focused on Laura's footsteps on the second floor. I heard her walk down the hall. I heard her stop in front of a door, my bedroom door. And then silence. A long silence. Too long. Frank kept talking, smiling, as if nothing was wrong, as if his wife wasn't rummaging through my room at that very moment. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. I couldn't pretend everything was fine anymore. I got up from the table with the excuse of getting more coffee. Frank didn't even look at me. He was checking his phone. I went up the stairs slowly. My heart was pounding in my ears. I reached the second floor hallway and saw my bedroom door ajar. I got closer. I heard a sound, like someone was moving furniture or opening drawers. I just stood there paralyzed. Part of me wanted to go in and demand an explanation, but another part, the cowardly part that had always lived inside me, stopped me, because deep down I knew what Laura was looking for, and I knew that if she found it, everything would fall apart. I went back downstairs before she saw me. I returned to the table. Frank was still on his phone. I poured him more wine. He smiled. "Thanks, Mom." That word Mom used to fill me with pride. Now it just sounded hollow, because I hadn't been a good mother. Not really. I had been selective. I had chosen who to love and who to forget, and now 40 years later, that choice was about to come to light. Laura came down 43 minutes after she went up. I know because I stared obsessively at the wall clock the entire time. When she appeared on the stairs, her face had changed. She was no longer the kind, smiling woman who had arrived at my house. She was someone else, someone who had seen something she shouldn't have, something that had broken her in two. Her eyes were red, not from crying, from shock, from disbelief. She approached Frank and leaned in toward him. I watched her from my chair. I saw how her lips moved slowly. I saw how Frank frowned. I saw how he put his wine glass down on the table with too much force. And then he looked at me. He looked at me in a way he never had before, as if I were a stranger, as if he had just discovered that the woman who gave him life was a monster. "Mom," he said, his voice trembling, "we need to talk." I wanted to get up. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear, but my legs wouldn't respond. I stayed seated, my hands in my lap, feeling the world I had built with lies begin to crumble, and all because Laura had gone up to my room. All because my son had asked her to look for something I thought I had hidden forever. Frank got up from the table. Laura followed him. I stayed seated motionless, my hands gripping the linen napkin until my knuckles turned white. "Mom, come upstairs with us," he said. It wasn't a request. It was an order. And for the first time in my life, my son spoke to me as if I were the one who had to obey. I stood up, my legs shaking. We went up the stairs in silence, a heavy silence, the kind of silence that comes before storms, before confessions, before irreparable breaks. We went into my bedroom. The bed was untouched, the ivory comforter perfectly smooth, but the closet was open, completely open, and on the floor in front of the closet was a metal box, an old box, rusty, a box I had hidden behind the winter coats 40 years ago, a box no one was ever supposed to find. Laura was standing by the window, her arms crossed, not looking at me. Frank was holding something in his hands, a yellowish envelope full of letters, letters I never answered, letters I never wanted to read. "What is this, Mom?" Frank asked. His voice sounded broken. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The words were stuck in my throat like stones. He opened one of the letters. He started to read aloud. "Dear Mom, I turned 17 today. No one here remembered. No one brought me a cake. Will you come visit me soon? I miss you. Frederick." Frank stopped reading. He looked at me with eyes full of something I couldn't decipher. Anger, disappointment, horror, maybe all of it. "Frederick," he repeated as if tasting the name in his mouth for the first time. "Who is Frederick, Mom?" I closed my eyes. I felt the walls of the room closing in on me, like the air was turning thick, like the past I had buried so carefully was rising from its grave to devour me. "Your brother," I finally whispered. "Frederick is your brother." The silence that followed was deafening. Frank dropped the letters to the floor. Laura turned to me with an expression of absolute disbelief. "Brother," Frank repeated. "I don't have a brother. You always told me I was an only child." "Always." I nodded slowly. "I know. I lied to you." The words came out of my mouth like knives, sharp, final. "I lied because it was easier that way, because Frederick wasn't like you, because he was sick." "Sick?" Laura asked from the window. Her voice was cold, distant. "What kind of sickness makes a mother erase her son from the family history?" I turned to her for the first time in years. I felt anger, real anger. "You don't know anything," I snapped. "You don't know what it was like living with him, how hard it was. The screaming, the episodes, the sleepless nights. Your father and I did the best we could. We sent him to a place where they could take care of him, where he would be safe." Frank picked up another letter from the floor. "Dear Mom, it's been 5 years since they brought me here. Why don't you write to me? Did I do something wrong? Please answer me. I promise I'll be good if you let me come home." Frank's voice broke on the last words. 5 years, Mom, 5 years waiting for an answer from you. A single letter, a visit, anything." He dropped the letter. "How old was he when you sent him to that place?" 16, I answered in a low voice. "He was 16. Frank stepped back as if I had slapped him. 16, he repeated. "A child. You sent a child to an institution and never went back for him." I shook my head. "He wasn't a child. He was dangerous. He had episodes. He broke things. One time he tried to hurt himself. Your father and I didn't know what to do. The doctor said it was for the best, that he needed specialized care." Laura approached the closet. She pulled more papers from the box, medical certificates, psychiatric reports, photographs. "It says here that Frederick had depression," she read aloud, "and severe anxiety. Nothing about being dangerous. Nothing about trying to hurt himself." She looked at me harshly. "It just says here that he was a teenager with emotional problems, a teenager who needed therapy and family support, not confinement." I wanted to snatch the papers from her. I wanted to scream that she didn't understand, that she hadn't been there, but I didn't have the strength. Frank sat on the edge of my bed. He had his head in his hands. "Where is he now?" he asked without looking at me. "Where is Frederick?" I swallowed hard. "I don't know." It was the truth, and it was a lie. I knew where he had been committed. I knew the name of the institution, but I never asked about him again. I never wanted to know again, because it was easier to forget than to face what I had done. "That's a lie," Laura said, holding up another paper. "Here's the address, St. Jude's Mental Health Center, on the outskirts of the city. Just 30 miles from here." Frank lifted his head. His eyes were red. 30 miles, he whispered. "He was 30 miles away from us all this time, and you never told me anything. You never gave me the chance to know my brother." I felt tears starting to well up, tears of guilt, of shame, of fear. "It was for your own good," I whispered. "I wanted you to have a normal life, without complications, without burdens. Frederick was a burden, and I didn't want you to carry that." "A burden," Frank repeated, standing up. "You're talking about a person, about your son, my brother, and you called him a burden." He came closer to me. I could see the disappointment in his face, the betrayal. "What else did you lie to me about, Mom? What else did you hide in that closet?" I backed away. "Nothing. There's nothing else. I just wanted to protect you." He shook his head. "You didn't protect me. You lied to me. And the worst part is, you kept lying for 40 years. 40 years, Mom." Laura closed the box carefully. She held it in her arms as if it were something sacred. "We're going to that place," she said, looking at Frank. "Tomorrow Tomorrow morning. We're going to find Frederick. Frank nodded. He turned to me one last time. I don't want you to come with us. I don't want to see you until I understand what really happened, who you really are. And with that, they left my room. I heard them go down the stairs. I heard the front door close, and then silent. I was left alone in that room full of ghosts, surrounded by letters I never answered, by memories I tried to bury, alone with the truth that had come to light. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed looking at the open box on the floor. The letters were scattered like the bones of a corpse that never received a proper burial. The moonlight came through the window, making the words written in faded ink shine like reprimands, like silent accusation. I got up shaking and picked up one of the letters. The handwriting was childish, uneven. Mom, I drew a tree in therapy today. The doctor says I draw well. Would you like to see it? I can save it for when you come. I closed my eyes. Frederick was 17 when he wrote that. 17. And I never went to see him. I never wanted to see his drawings. I never wanted to know if he was okay or not. I just erased him from my life as if he had never existed. I went down to the kitchen as the sun began to peek over the horizon. I made coffee. My hands were shaking so much, I spilled half of it on the counter. The house was too quiet, too big, too empty. It had always been empty, but now that emptiness had a name. It had a face. Frederick, my forgotten son, the one I sacrificed so Frank could have a perfect life, so I could pretend I was an exemplary mother, a devoted wife, a respectable woman. All lies, all built on the abandonment of a child who just needed love. The phone rang at 9 in the morning. It was Frank. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask how I was. He got straight to the point. We're on our way to St. Jude's, Laura and me. We need to know if Frederick is still there, if he's still alive. His voice sounded hollow, distant, as if he were speaking from the bottom of a well. Frank, I tried to say something, anything, but he cut me off. I don't want to hear it right now, Mom. I just called to let you know I'm not letting this go. I'm going to find my brother, with or without your help. And he hung up. The dial tone echoed in my ear like a death sentence. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, holding the phone like an idiot. Part of me wanted to call him back, to beg him not to go, to tell him it was better to leave the past where it was, buried, forgotten. But the other part, the part that had been carrying this guilt for 40 years, knew it was too late. The truth was out, and there was no way to put it back in that rusty box. There was no way to undo what I had done. I spent the next few hours walking through the house like a ghost. I went up and down the stairs aimlessly. I went into rooms I hadn't used in years. The one that was Frank's room when he was a boy. The guest room that never hosted anyone. And then at the end of the hall, the door I always kept closed. Frederick's room. I hadn't gone in there in 40 years, not even to clean it. I just closed the door the day they took him away and never opened it again. But now, with my hands sweating and my heart pounding like a war drum, I turned the knob. The door opened with a creak. The air that came out smelled musty, of frozen time, of a stolen childhood. The olive green curtains were drawn. The single bed was still made with the same quilt Frederick used. On the walls, faded posters of bands that no longer existed. On the desk, stacked notebooks, pencils in a glass, a small lamp covered in dust. Everything exactly as he left it, as if it was waiting for him to come back at any moment. But I knew he would never come back, because I never went to get him. I sat on his bed. The mattress groaned under my weight. I took one of the notebooks from the desk. I opened it. It was full of drawings, trees, houses, smiling people, and on every page in the top right corner, a date. The dates ranged from when he was 12 to 15. After that, the pages were blank, because at 16 we sent him to that place, and he stopped drawing. He stopped dreaming. He stopped being the boy he once was. And all because of me, because I chose comfort over love, appearance over truth, Frank over Frederick. The phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. I answered, my heart in my throat. Mrs. Eleanor Miller, a male voice asked. Formal, dry. Yes. I barely replied. This is Private Investigator John Harris. Your son Frank hired me to locate information on a Frederick Miller. I have an update. I felt the world tilt. What? What kind of update? There was a pause. Frederick Miller is still alive. He is a resident at the St. Jude's Center. He is 62 years old. He has never left. He has never had any visitors, except for his brother and sister-in-law 2 hours ago. The tears started rolling down my cheeks uncontrollably. Is he okay? I asked in a broken voice. Physically, he is stable. Mentally, well, that's something your son will want to discuss with you personally. The investigator paused again. Mrs. Miller, were you aware that Frederick has been trying to contact you for all these years? There are records of phone calls that were never answered, letters that were returned. Did you know all that? I couldn't answer. I just hung up. I dropped the phone to the floor, and for the first time in 40 years, I cried. I truly cried, with no pretense, no masks. I cried for the son I abandoned, for the letters I never read, for the visits I never made. cried, for the mother I never was. Frank arrived at my house at dusk. He walked in without knocking. Laura was with him. Both of them had serious, tired faces. They found me sitting in the living room, my eyes swollen and my hands trembling in my lap. "We saw him," Frank said. He didn't sit down. He stood in front of me like a judge reading a sentence. "We saw Frederick. We talked to him. And do you know what the worst part is, Mom? He still asks about you. After 40 years of abandonment, after all the unanswered letters, he still asks if you're going to come see him someday." Laura crossed her arms. "He has a small room painted cream with a window that looks out onto the garden. He says he likes to watch the birds, that they're the only thing that makes him feel free because he has never been free. Eleanor, he never left that place. He never had a chance to live." She looked at me with contempt. "And all because you decided it was easier to hide him than to love him." "I didn't know," I started to say, but Frank held up his hand. "No, don't say you didn't know. You knew perfectly well. You had the address. You had the phone number. You could have visited him at any time. But you chose not to. You chose to pretend he didn't exist. And now you want us to feel sorry for you." He shook his head. "It doesn't work that way, Mom. You can't cry 40 years later and expect that to fix everything." I stood up on shaky legs. What do you want me to do?" Frank stared at me. "I want you to go see him. Tomorrow. With me. I want you to face what you did. I want you to apologize to him. And after that, I'm going to do everything I can to get him out of there. To give him the life he should have had from the beginning." I nodded slowly. I had no choice. I had no right to refuse. "All right," I whispered. "I'll go." That night was the longest of my life. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, imagining the moment I would have to face Frederick. What would I say to him? How could I look into the eyes of the son I abandoned? What words could erase 40 years of absence? None. I knew that, but I still had to try, because Frank was right, because the time had come to stop running, to stop hiding behind excuses and lies, to face the monster I had been. At 7 in the morning, Frank knocked on the door. He came alone. Laura had stayed home, he said. She didn't want to witness what was about to happen. I didn't blame her. I didn't want to be there either. I got in the car without a word. Frank drove in silence. The radio was off. There was only the sound of the engine and my own ragged breathing. I looked out the window. The trees passed by quickly. The houses, the signs. Everything seemed unreal, as if I were living a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The St. Jude's Center appeared after a 30-minute drive. It was a 3-story building, sand-colored walls, windows with white bars, well-kept gardens. At first glance, it looked like a peaceful place, almost pleasant, but I knew the truth. I knew that behind those walls were forgotten people, abandoned, like Frederick. Frank parked the car. He turned off the engine. He turned to me. "Listen to me carefully, Mom. You are going to go in there. You are going to see Frederick, and you are going to be honest with him. No excuses, no justifications. If you can't do that, you better stay in the car." I nodded, voiceless. We got out. We walked toward the entrance. A nurse greeted us with a professional smile. "Good morning. You must be Frederick Miller's family." Family. That word hit me like a fist in the stomach. Were we his family? After everything we did? After everything we didn't do? "Yes," Frank replied. "We're here to see him." The nurse nodded. "Follow me, please. Frederick is in the garden. He likes to spend his mornings there." We walked through long hallways. It smelled like disinfectant and institutional food. The walls were painted in light colors. There were pictures of landscapes, fake flowers in vases, everything designed to look welcoming. But it wasn't. It was a place where people went to be forgotten, to slowly disappear, to become shadows of what they once were. We went out to the garden. It was large. There were wooden benches, leafy trees, a small pond with fish, and there, sitting on a bench near the pond, was him, Frederick, my son. I recognized him instantly despite the years. He had gray hair, thinner than when he was a teenager. He was wearing a beige shirt and denim pants. He was looking at the water, motionless, as if time didn't exist for him. Frank approached first. "Hi, Frederick." He looked up. He smiled, a soft, childlike smile. "Hi, Frank. You came back." His voice was calm. No resentment, no anger, and that somehow was worse, because it meant he had accepted his fate, that he had stopped fighting a long time ago. Frank sat down next to him. He motioned for me to come closer. I walked slowly. Every step felt heavy, as if I were carrying stones on my feet. Frederick looked at me. His eyes were the same color as mine, honey-colored, my mother's eyes. "Hello," I said in a trembling voice. He tilted his head. "You're my mom." The question pierced me like a spear. He didn't recognize me. 40 years. 40 years without seeing me, and he didn't know who I was. "Yes," I replied, sitting on the bench across from him. "I'm your mom." Frederick nodded slowly. "Frank told me you would come, but I wasn't sure, because you never come." He said it without bitterness, like someone commenting on the weather, as a simple, irrefutable fact. "I know," I whispered, "and I am so sorry." He looked back at the pond. "The fish are orange. Do you see them?" "I like the fish. They don't make noise. They don't bother anyone. They just swim." There was something in the way he spoke, something slow, paused, as if every word required immense effort. "Frederick," I said, trying to find the right words, "I want to ask for your forgiveness." He looked at me curiously. "Forgiveness for what?" I swallowed hard. "For not being here, for not visiting you, for leaving you alone for so long." Frederick tilted his head to one side. "But I'm not alone. There are doctors here, and nurses, and other people. Elena comes sometimes. She's a nurse. She brings me cookies on Fridays." "Will you bring me cookies?" The innocence in his question shattered me. "Yes," I replied, tears streaming down my cheeks. "I'll bring you cookies, and anything else you want." Frank intervened. "Frederick, we want you to get out of here. We want you to come live with us." Frederick frowned. "Leave? But I live here. I've always lived here." He turned to me. "Mom brought me here when I was sad. She said they would make me better here, and now I'm better. The doctors say I don't cry as much as I used to." My heart broke into pieces. "You cried a lot?" I asked. He nodded. "Yes, the first few years. I cried because I missed my house, my room, my drawings, and you. But then I stopped crying, because crying didn't make you come back. I couldn't take it anymore. I got up from the bench and walked a few steps. I needed air. I needed to scream. I needed the earth to swallow me whole." Frank came over to me. "Now you understand," he said in a low voice. "You understand what you did to him, what you did to all of us." I looked at him. "How can we fix this? How can I make it up to him?" Frank shook his head. "You can't. There's no way to make up for 40 years. But you can start by getting him out of here, by giving him a chance to live on the outside, to see the world, to be free." I went back to Frederick. I sat next to him. I took his hand. It was cold. "Frederick, my love, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I brought you here because I thought it was for the best, but I was wrong. And now I want to take you home. I want you to know your brother. I want us to have a real family." He looked at me with confused eyes. "Can I bring my things? I have a new drawing. I made it last week. It's of a tree like the ones here." I nodded, crying. "Yes, you can bring anything you want." The nurse who had greeted us approached. "Mrs. Miller, if you want to start the process for Frederick's release, we need to speak with the director. There are papers to sign, evaluations to be done. It's not something that can happen from one day to the next." Frank stood up. "We'll do whatever it takes. Whatever. But my brother is getting out of here." The nurse nodded. "I understand. Come with me, please." We followed the nurse back to the building. Frederick stayed in the garden. Before going in, I turned to look at him. He was watching the fish again, still, calm, oblivious to the fact that his life was about to change, that 40 years of confinement might be coming to an end, and I wondered if I would really be able to give him what he deserved, if after so much damage there was still a way to repair even a small fraction of what I had broken. The director's office was on the second floor. It was small, neat. There were framed diplomas on the walls and a green plant in the corner. The director was a woman in her 50s, brown hair pulled back in a bun, thin glasses, a serious but not hostile expression. She invited us to sit. Frank and I took the chairs in front of her desk. She opened a thick folder. "Frederick Miller's file," she said. "Admitted on March 15, 1985. He was 16 years old. Initial diagnosis, severe depression and anxiety disorder." She paused. She looked at me over her glasses. "During the first 5 years, Frederick showed significant signs of improvement with therapy and medication. The psychiatrists recommended several times that he return to the family environment with outpatient follow-up. However, those recommendations were never addressed. There was no response from his guardians. Every word was a slap in the face. Frank clenched his fists on his legs. I looked down. I couldn't meet that woman's gaze. I couldn't face the truth she was reading in a neutral voice. "After the first 10 years, the director continued, Frederick stopped asking about his family. He stopped writing letters. He adapted to the center's routine. He participated in art workshops. He helped in the garden. He became one of our most cooperative and stable residents." She closed the folder. "But he never should have stayed here this long. Frederick poses no danger to himself or others. He doesn't have violent episodes. He doesn't require constant supervision. He could have lived on the outside with adequate support. Decades ago," Frank leaned forward, "what do we need to do to get him out of here? What's the process? How long will it take?" The director folded her hands on the desk. "First, we need an updated psychiatric evaluation. That will take about a week. Then we need a re-entry plan. Where will Frederick live? Who will be his legal guardian? Does he have health insurance? He needs a prepared space." Frank nodded. "He'll live with me, with my wife and me. I will be his guardian. And yes, he has insurance. I'll take care of everything." The director seemed satisfied with the answer. "Good. I also recommend that Frederick have therapy sessions to prepare him psychologically for the transition. He has been here for 40 years. The world outside has changed a lot. He needs time to adapt. We can't just pull him out one day without preparation. She turned to me. And you, Mrs. Miller? What will your role be in all this? I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My role. What role could I have after what I had done? Frank answered for me. She will visit Frederick. She will rebuild the relationship she destroyed, and she will help in any way necessary. He said it firmly. No room for negotiation. The director nodded. I understand. Then we will proceed with the evaluations. You can visit him every day if you wish. In fact, I recommend it. Frederick needs to get used to seeing you, to trust that this time you won't disappear. That last sentence was like a knife twisting in an open wound. Because she was right. I had disappeared, and Frederick had every right not to believe that this time would be different. We left the office. We went down the stairs in silence. We returned to the garden. Frederick was still on the same bench. This time there was a nurse sitting next to him. She was young, about 30, black hair, kind smile. You must be Frederick's family, she said, standing up. I'm Elena. I've worked here for 5 years. Frederick is one of my favorite patients. He's very sweet. Frank shook her hand. Thank you for taking care of him. Elena nodded. It's my job, but with Frederick it's easy. He never complains. He's always grateful, even for the smallest things. I approached Frederick. He was drawing in a notebook. Simple lines, a tree, a bird. Can I see your drawing? I asked. He held up the notebook. It's not finished yet, but this is the tree over there. He pointed to a large oak tree on the other side of the garden. It has a lot of leaves. It's hard to draw all of them, but I'm trying. I looked at the drawing. It was beautiful, not perfect, but full of care, of patience, of love for the details. It's lovely, I said. You were always good at drawing. Frederick looked at me surprised. You knew I liked to draw. I nodded. The tears blurred my vision again. Yes, when you were a boy, you filled entire notebooks with drawings. Trees, houses, animals. Your father and I used to hang them on the refrigerator. He smiled, a small shy smile. I don't remember that. He closed the notebook. You draw too, Mom. I shook my head. No, but I'd like you to teach me, if you want. Frederick nodded. Okay, I can teach you. It's easy when you practice a lot. Frank sat on the other side of Frederick. Brother, there's something I want to tell you. We're going to get you out of here. You're going to come live with me. You'll have your own room. You can draw all you want. Go to the park. See the city. Do things you've never done. Frederick tilted his head. For how long? Frank frowned. What do you mean? Frederick looked down. How long can I be out? Then I have to come back here. The question broke my heart. Frank took his hand. No, Frederick. It's forever. You're going to live with me. You're not coming back here. Ever. Unless you want to. Frederick processed the information in silence. Then he looked at Elena. Is it true I can leave forever? Elena nodded, her eyes shining. Yes, Frederick, it's true. Your family came for you. You're going to have a new life. Frederick looked at his drawing again. And my things. Can I take my drawings? I have a lot. In boxes. In my room. Frank smiled. You can take anything you want. Everything. Frederick nodded slowly. Okay then, I'll go with you. We spent the rest of the afternoon with him. Frank told him about his house, about Laura, about the things they would do together. Frederick listened intently. He asked simple questions. Are there trees near your house? Can I have my own notebook? Is Laura nice? Each question revealed how small his world had become, how limited his expectations were. And I blamed myself more with every word that came out of his mouth, because I was the one who stole his chance to dream big, to want more, to expect a full life. When it was time to leave, Frederick walked us to the main door. Will you come back tomorrow? He asked, anxiety in his voice. Frank hugged his brother. Yes, we'll be back tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, and every day until you can come with us. Frederick looked relieved. Then he looked at me. You'll come back too, Mom. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Yes, my love, I'll come back too. I promise, he smiled. Okay, I'll be waiting then. And he turned to go back to the garden. Elena walked with him. We watched them walk away, two figures walking slowly among the trees. One of them, my son, the son I abandoned, the son who was now giving me a second chance I didn't deserve. In the car on the way back, Frank said nothing. He drove with a clenched jaw, knuckles white on the steering wheel. I looked out the window. The tears fell silently. I didn't bother to wipe them away. After 30 minutes, Frank spoke. I'm going to do everything I can to give Frederick the life he deserves. But I need you to understand something. Mom, what you did is unforgivable. You can spend the rest of your life trying to make up for it, but it will never be enough. Never, I nodded. I know, he sighed, but Frederick is giving you a chance. I don't know why. I don't know how he can be so generous after everything, but he is. So don't waste it. Don't fail us again. I won't, I whispered. This time I won't. Frank didn't answer, and I just just stared at the road ahead, thinking about the promises I had broken, about the letters I never answered, about the years I stole, and about the small, almost impossible chance that I could somehow begin to repair the irreparable damage I had caused, even if it was too late. Even if I had no right, even if I didn't deserve the forgiveness Frederick seemed willing to give me, because sometimes love doesn't come when we deserve it. It comes when we are willing to receive it. And Frederick, after 40 years of waiting, was still willing to love, even a mother who never knew how to love him back. The following days were a whirlwind of emotion. Every morning, Frank would pick me up early. We went to the St. Jude's Center together. We sat with Frederick in the garden. We brought him things, cookies, magazines, new colored pencils. He received each gift as if it were a treasure. His eyes would light up, his hands would tremble with excitement, and every time he opened something, he would say thank you, as if it were the first word he learned, as if gratitude was the only thing he had left after so much neglect. Laura came with us on the third day. She brought a camera. "I want to take pictures," she said. "I want Frederick to have memories of this moment, of when his new life began." Frederick posed for the photos shyly. He didn't know how to smile naturally. His smiles were forced, mechanical, as if he had forgotten how to express genuine happiness. But Laura was patient. She spoke to him gently. She told him stories about the house, about the room they were preparing for him, about the neighbors who wanted to meet him. And little by little, Frederick began to relax, to believe that this was real, that this wasn't a dream he would wake up from, only to find himself alone in his room at the center again. During one of those visits, Elena took us to Frederick's room. It was small, cream-colored walls, a single bed, a desk with drawers full of notebook, a closet with simple clothes, and boxes, many boxes stacked against the wall. "Those are his drawings," Elena explained. "Frederick never throws anything away. He keeps every drawing he makes. He says that someday someone will want to see them." I opened one of the boxes. It was full of drawings on different sized paper, trees, birds, faces, landscapes, all carefully dated in the top right corner. 40 years of art, 40 years of loneliness captured in lines and shadows. Frank looked at the drawings too. He picked one up. It was a portrait of a woman, long hair, big eyes, a soft smile. "Who is this?" he asked. Elena looked at the drawing. "That's his mom. Frederick draws her a lot, especially in the early years. He used to say that if he drew her enough times, she would come to visit him." Frank looked at me. In his eyes, there was something I couldn't decipher. Pity, anger, disappointment. Maybe all of it. He put the drawing back in the box. "We're taking all these boxes home. Every single one." Elena nodded. "Frederick will be so happy. He's always afraid someone will throw his things away." Frederick's psychiatric evaluation took 6 days. During that time, a team of doctors interviewed him. They ran tests. They observed his behavior. And in the end, they all reached the same conclusion. Frederick was completely fit to live outside the center. He posed no risk. His mental health was stable. He just needed regular therapeutic follow-up and family support. When the director gave us the results, Frank exhaled, as if he had been holding his breath for years. "So he can leave," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. The director smiled. "Yes, he can leave. We just need you to sign the custody papers and we can proceed with the discharge." We signed everything that afternoon. Frank as the legal guardian, me as the mother. My hand was shaking so much when I signed that the signature was barely visible. But there it was, my name on a document that made my return to Frederick's life official. A late return, tainted, insufficient, but a return nonetheless. The director gave us copies of everything. "The official discharge will be the day after tomorrow," she said. "I recommend you come early. Frederick will be anxious, and you'll want to help him pack." That night, Laura organized a dinner at their house, Frank, her, and me. "We need to talk about how this is all going to work," Laura said, serving the food. "Frederick is going to need structure, clear routines, and a lot of patience. We can't expect him to adapt immediately. He's been locked up for 40 years. The world outside is going to seem overwhelming." Frank nodded. "I've already hired a therapist who specializes in re-entry. She'll come 3 times a week. I also spoke with a doctor for his medical follow-up. And we're finishing setting up his room." I turned to Frank. "Can I see the room?" He hesitated. Then he nodded. "Come on." We went up to the second floor. At the end of the hall, there was an open door. We went in. It was a spacious room. Walls painted a light green, a large bed with a white comforter, a wide desk near the window, empty shelves waiting to be filled with Frederick's drawings, and on the wall, a framed picture. It was one of the drawings we had found in the box boxes. A tree, large, leafy, with deep roots. I thought it would be good to put one of his drawings here, Frank said, so he feels like this space is really his. I looked at the frame. The tears started falling again. It's perfect, I whispered. Everything is perfect. Frank put a hand on my shoulder. Mom, I know you want to be a part of this, and Frederick wants you to be, but I need you to understand something. If you hurt him again, if you disappear again, if you make him feel like he doesn't matter, I will personally make sure you never see him again. Understood. I nodded. Understood. The day of the discharge arrived. We went early as the director suggested. Frederick was waiting for us at the entrance with 2 small suitcases. Elena was by his side. She had been crying. It's hard to say goodbye, she said, wiping her tears. I've taken care of Frederick for 5 years. It feels like saying goodbye to a friend. Frederick gave her an awkward hug. Thank you for the cookies, Elena, and for talking to me when I was sad. She hugged him back. Take care of yourself, Frederick, and remember you can always call me if you need anything. We put the suitcases in the car. Then we went back to Frederick's room for the boxes of drawings. There were 16 in total. We carried them between the 3 of us. We arranged them in the trunk and the back seat. Frederick watched everything in silence. His eyes scanned the building, the gardens, the windows, as if he were memorizing every detail. Are you okay? Laura asked. Frederick nodded. Yes, I'm just saying goodbye. I lived here a long time. It was my home. But now I have a new home, with you. Before we left, the director came out to say goodbye. Frederick, I wish you the best. You've been an exemplary resident. I'm sure you'll do very well on the outside. Frederick shook her hand. Thank you for everything, doctor. She smiled. Then she looked at me. Mrs. Miller, take care of your son. Give him the love he deserves. It's never too late to start over. I nodded, unable to speak. The words were stuck in my throat, because I knew she was right, but I also knew that some things, even if you start over, are never the same. There's always a scar. There's always the memory of what was lost. Frederick got in the car. He sat in the back seat next to some of the drawing boxes. He fastened his seatbelt. He looked out the window. Frank started the engine, and we began to drive away from the St. Jude's Center. Frederick didn't stop looking back until the building completely disappeared. Then he turned to face forward. Is your house far, Frank? He asked. Not too far. About 40 minutes. Frederick nodded. Okay, I can wait 40 minutes. And he was quiet for the rest of the ride, looking at everything, the cars, the buildings, the people walking on the streets, the world that had been out of his reach for 40 years, the world that finally, after so long, was his again. When we arrived at Frank's house, Laura opened the front door. Welcome home, Frederick. He got out of the car slowly. He looked at the front of the house, the small garden out front, the front steps. It's pretty, he said. It has flowers. We went inside. Frederick stood in the living room. His eyes scanned everything, the furniture, the photographs on the walls, the television. There are a lot of things here, he commented. There weren't this many things at the center. Frank smiled. You can touch anything you want. This is your home now, too. Frederick nodded, but didn't move, as if he were afraid of breaking something, of not really belonging. Laura took him to his room. She opened the door. Frederick entered with slow steps. He looked at the bed, the desk, the shelves, and then he saw the frame on the wall, his drawing, the tree. He walked over to it. He ran his fingers over the frame. It's mine, he whispered. I made this. Frank came in behind him. Yes, it's yours. And this room is yours too. It's all yours. Frederick turned around. He had tears in his eyes. Can I really stay here? It's not just for a few days. Frank hugged his brother. It's forever, Frederick. I promise you. Forever. Frederick's first few days in his new home were difficult. He didn't know how to use many things. The TV remote confused him. The microwave scared him. The shower with multiple knobs overwhelmed him. Laura had to teach him everything step by step, with infinite patience, as if she were teaching a child. And in a way he was. Because Frederick had stopped learning about the world at 16. Everything that came after was institutional experience, rigid routines, controlled spaces, limited options. Now he had to learn to live, to choose, to be free, and that was terrifying. The first night, Frederick couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m, Frank found him sitting in the living room, the lights off, staring out the window. What's wrong, brother? Frank asked, turning on a lamp. Frederick flinched. I can't sleep. There are too many noises. Cars, dogs barking. At the center, everything was quiet after 9. Frank sat next to him. I understand. It's different, but you'll get used to it. Do you want me to put on some soft music? Sometimes that helps. Frederick shook his head. No, I just want to know this is real. That tomorrow, I'm not going to wake up in my room at the center. Frank put a hand on his brother's shoulder. It's real, Frederick, and you're going to wake up here, in your home, with us. Frederick nodded slowly. Okay, I think I'll try to sleep again. He stood up. He walked toward his room, but before going in, he stopped. Frank, he said without turning around, thanks for coming to find me. I had already given up hope that anyone would, and he closed the door. Frank just stood in the hallway, his hands in his pockets, his heart broken for his brother, and furious at me for having caused so much pain. I visited the house every other day. I brought food. I helped with whatever I could, but there was a distance between Frederick and me. He was polite. He always said, "Thank you, Mom," when I brought him something. He always smiled when I arrived, but he didn't talk much to me. He didn't seek me out. He didn't ask me questions. It was as if I were a polite visitor instead of his mother, and maybe he was right to treat me that way, because I had been an absent visitor for 40 years. I didn't deserve any more than that. One day while Laura was making lunch, I sat with Frederick in the living room. He was drawing. He was always drawing. "What are you making?" I asked. He held up the notebook. "It's Frank's garden. It has 3 trees and purple flowers. I want to draw it so I can remember it." I moved a little closer. "Can I sit here? Am I bothering you?" Frederick shook his head. "You're not bothering me." We sat in silence for a while. I watched him draw. His hands moved with precision, with care. Every line had a purpose. "Frederick," I said finally, "I know I can never repair what I did to you. I know no apology is enough, but I want you to know that I think about you every day, and I regret it every single day." He stopped drawing. He looked at me. "Why didn't you come visit me?" "Mom, did I do something bad?" The question shattered me. "No, my love, you did nothing wrong. You never did anything wrong. It was me. I was scared. Scared of not knowing how to help you. Scared of people knowing my son was in a place like that. And I chose to hide you instead of loving you. And that was unforgivable." Frederick went back to his drawing. "I missed you a lot. The first few years I cried every night. I thought maybe you were sick or that you had died because I didn't understand why you didn't come. Then after many years passed, I understood that you just didn't want to come, and that hurt more." His words were like knives, but I deserved every one of them. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." Frederick nodded. "I'm sorry too, Mom. I'm sorry I wasn't the son you wanted, the son who didn't cause you problems. Like Frank." "No," I said, taking his hand. "Don't say that. You are exactly the son I should have loved, the son who deserved all my love. And I failed. I failed you. But if you give me the chance, I want to try to be the mother I should have been from the beginning." Frederick looked at me with those honey-colored eyes, my mother's eyes, the eyes I had inherited and passed on to him. "Okay," he said, "you can try." And he went back to drawing, as if that conversation hadn't just broken and rebuilt something between us at the same time. Frederick's therapist came for the first time a week after his arrival. Her name was Inez. She was a woman in her 40s, short hair, calm voice. She had worked on many re-entry cases. "Frederick is going to need time," she explained to us after her first session with him. "He has developed very strong survival mechanism. He adapted to confinement because he had no other choice. Now he needs to unlearn those mechanisms and learn to live without restriction. And that can be terrifying for him. Is there anything we can do to help?" Frank asked. Inez nodded. "Yes. Keep simple but flexible routines. Give him choices but not too many. Accompany him on his first outings. The supermarket, the park, places where he can get used to people and noise. And above all, be patient. Progress will be slow. There will be setbacks, but they will come." She gave us a list of recommendations: breathing exercises for anxiety, activities to strengthen his autonomy, ways to help him without overprotecting him. Frank took Frederick to the park for the first time 2 weeks after his arrival. I went with them. Frederick walked slowly, looking at everything. There were children playing, dogs running, people exercising. "There are so many people," he commented. "Are there always this many people outside?" Frank smiled. "Yeah, the world is full of people, but you don't have to talk to anyone if you don't want to. Just walk, observe, enjoy." Frederick nodded. We sat on a bench near a small lake. There were ducks swimming. Frederick watched them fascinated. "Can I feed them?" he asked. "Of course," Frank replied, taking some bread out of his backpack. Frederick walked to the water's edge. He threw small pieces of bread. The ducks swam over. He smiled, a genuine smile, the first one I had seen since he left the center. "They're funny," he said. "I like ducks. They're like the fish. Calm." He stayed there for a long time, feeding the ducks, laughing, when one of them splashed in the water, and I watched him watching my 62-year-old son discover things he should have discovered when he was 6. On the way home, Frederick was more relaxed. He even talked a little about what he had seen. "The park is big, bigger than the garden at the center, and it has a lake. I'd like to go back tomorrow." Frank nodded. "We can go back whenever you want. It's a public place. It's yours as much as it is anyone else's. Frederick processed that information. Mine, he repeated. I never had anything that was mine and other people's at the same time. I felt a lump in my throat because that sentence summed it all up. Frederick had never had a sense of belonging. He had never felt like the world was his too, and I was responsible for that. That night at dinner, Frederick asked a question. Frank, how old am I? Frank put down his fork. You're 62, brother. Why do you ask? Frederick looked down. Because I feel like I'm 16. Like all this time didn't pass. Like I just got to the center yesterday. He touched his face. But I have wrinkles, and my hair is gray, so I know a long time passed, but I don't feel it. Laura leaned toward him. That's normal, Frederick. You lost a lot of years, but now you have the rest of your life to live, to get back what you lost. Frederick nodded. I want to learn things. I want to know how the world works. I want to do things I never did. Frank smiled. We'll make a list of everything you want to do, and we'll do it one by one. That night, after Frederick went to sleep, Frank and Laura sat with me in the living room. He's getting better, Laura said. Every day, he's a little more comfortable, a little more confident. Frank nodded. Yeah, but there's still a long way to go, and we need to be prepared for when he really starts to process what he lost. When he realizes everything he didn't get to live, that's when he's going to need us the most. I looked at my son, at Frank, the son who was always with me, the son I never abandoned. Thank you, I said. Thank you for doing this for your brother, for giving him a life, for being a better person than I was. Frank looked at me. I'm not doing it for you, Mom. I'm doing it for him. Because Frederick deserves to be happy. He deserves to have a family, and I'm going to make sure he has one. I nodded, because he was right. This was never about me. It was about Frederick, and about giving him what he should have had from the very beginning. Love, family, a place to belong. 1 month after Frederick left the center, Frank organized a small family gathering, just the 4 of us. He wanted Frederick to feel like he had people, that he wasn't alone. We cooked food together. Laura made lasagna. I brought a salad and bread. Frederick helped set the table. He counted the plates carefully. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 of us, he said, smiling. A family of 4. Frank ruffled his hair. That's right, brother. There are 4 of us. During dinner, Frank pulled out a small box. Frederick, I have something for you. Frederick looked at the box curiously. What is it? Frank handed it to him. Open it. Frederick opened it slowly. Inside was a cell phone. New, simple, with large buttons. It's so you can call us whenever you want. So you know we're always here, even if we're not physically with you. Frederick took the phone out. He turned it over in his hands. I never had a phone. They didn't let us at the center. Frank nodded. I know, but you can have one now. I already saved my number and Laura's, and Mom's too. Frederick looked at me. I can call you Mom. I nodded, my throat tight. Yes, my love. You can call me whenever you want. Anytime. Frederick carefully put the phone in his shirt pocket. Thank you. I'll take good care of it. We finished dinner. Laura brought dessert, chocolate cake. Frederick ate slowly, savoring every bite. It's good, he said. At the center, we only had cake on special occasions, like birthdays. Frank stopped. Brother, when is your birthday? Frederick thought for a moment. April 12th. My birthday is in April. That's in 3 weeks, Laura said, looking at the calendar on her phone. We have to celebrate. Frederick shook his head. You don't need to do anything special. I'm not used to celebrations. Frank leaned forward. That's exactly why we have to celebrate. Because we never did before. Because you have 63 years of birthdays to make up for. Frederick smiled shyly. You really want to celebrate my birthday? Frank nodded. Of course I do. You're my brother, and your birthday is important. The next few weeks were all about preparation. Laura bought decorations, silver and white balloons, streamers. Frank ordered a cake from an expensive bakery, 3 tiers, with strawberries and cream. I offered to cook, to make Frederick's favorite dishes, although I was still discovering what those were. Because I didn't know what he liked, I didn't know his preferences. I had spent 40 years knowing nothing about him, and now I had to learn everything from scratch, as if I had just met him, because in a way I had. The day of his birthday arrived. Frank and Laura decorated the living room while Frederick was sleeping. They hung the balloons. They set the table with a white tablecloth, fresh flowers in the center. When Frederick came down for breakfast, he froze on the stairs. What is all this? Frank smiled. It's your birthday party, brother. Happy 63rd. Frederick came down slowly. He touched the balloons, the streamers, as if he couldn't believe they were real. This is all for me. Laura hugged him. Yes, all for you. I arrived at noon with the food. Frederick met me at the door. Mom, look, there are balloons and a sign that says, Happy Birthday, Frederick. Frank made it. His eyes were shining, like a child's, and I realized this was probably the first real birthday party he'd had since he was 16, since before I sent him to that place. It's beautiful, I said, forcing a smile, because inside I was breaking, thinking about all the birthdays he missed, all the candles he never blew out, all the parties he never had. We ate together. We laughed. Frank told stories from when he was a kid, stories that included Frederick. Remember when we tried to make a fort in the yard with sheets and it fell on top of us? Frederick frowned. I don't remember that. Frank looked surprised. You don't? We were like 7 and 9. We got trapped under the sheets, screaming for help until Dad came to rescue us. Frederick shook his head. I don't remember much from when I was a kid. It's like those memories were erased. Inez, the therapist, had warned us about this. Frederick's memory had been affected by the trauma and prolonged confinement. Many of his childhood memories were blocked, fragmented. It's okay, Frank said. I'll tell you all the stories I remember, and we'll make new memories together. Frederick nodded. I'd like that. After lunch, Laura brought out the cake with 63 lit candles. Frederick looked at the flames. That's a lot of candles, Frank laughed. Yep, one for every year. But you don't have to blow them all out at once. We can help. Frederick closed his eyes. We all sang, Happy birthday, happy birthday, dear Frederick. When we finished, he blew out the candles. It took him 3 tries to get them all, but he did it. We clapped. He smiled, that genuine smile that only appeared in special moments. I never had so many candles on a cake, he said. It's nice. We cut the cake. Frederick tried the first piece. This is delicious. Better than any cake from the center. And he kept eating with a happiness so pure, it made me cry. After the cake, Frank brought out presents, a large box wrapped in shiny paper. Frederick opened it carefully, trying not to tear the paper. Inside was a complete set of art supplies, professional colored pencil, watercolors, brushes, papers of different textures, canvases, everything an artist could need. Frederick took each item out with reverence. This must have cost a lot of money, he whispered. Frank put a hand on his shoulder. It doesn't matter how much it cost. You deserve to have the best tools for your art. Laura gave him another gift, a book, Advanced Drawing Techniques. Frederick read the title. He opened the book. He flipped through the pages full of illustrations and explanations. I can learn new things with this. Laura nodded. You can. And if you need help, we can look for art classes for you, so you can learn from a teacher. Frederick looked up. Really, I could take classes. Frank nodded. Of course. You can do whatever you want, brother. The world is yours now. I gave him my gift last. It was smaller, a velvet box. Frederick opened it. Inside was a watch. It wasn't new. It was old, with a worn leather strap, a gold face. This watch belonged to your grandfather, I explained. My father. He gave it to me before he died, and I always wanted to give it to my sons. I gave one to Frank when he turned 18, and this one was for you. I should have given it to you 45 years ago, but I'm giving it to you now, because it's never too late to give you what belongs to you. Frederick took the watch out. He held it carefully. It works, I nodded. Yes, I had it repaired last week. It works perfectly. Frederick put it on his wrist. It was a little big on him. I like it. It reminds me that time keeps passing, that now I have time to live. His words cut through me, because he was right. Time had passed, too much time, and we couldn't get it back, but we could start over. We could give him the years he had left, fill them with love, with family, with everything he should have always had. That night, after we cleaned everything up, Frederick sat on the sofa with all his gifts around him. This was the best birthday of my life, he said. Frank sat next to him. It's going to be the first of many, brother. I promise. Frederick looked at his new watch. Frank, can I ask you something? Frank nodded. Of course. Anything. Frederick hesitated. Then he spoke. Why didn't Mom visit me all those years? Was it because I was different? Because I had problems? The silence that followed was thick. Frank looked at me, waiting for me to answer. I sat down across from Frederick. It wasn't because you were different, my love. It was because I was a coward. Because I was afraid to face what I had done. To admit I had failed as a mother. And instead of fixing my mistake, I ran. I abandoned you. And that's inexcusable. It's unforgivable. But I want you to know that every day of these 40 years, a part of me knew it was wrong. And that part ate me up inside. Because I knew I had lost my son. And it was my fault. Frederick looked at me for a long time. Then he nodded. It's okay, Mom. I understand. Sometimes it's easier to run away than to face hard things. I did it too. At the center, when things got hard, I would go into my head. I would draw. I would dream. I escaped. So, I understand. His forgiveness was so simple, so pure, so unearned that I could only cry. Frank put his arms around both of us. We're a family, he said. Broken, complicated, but a family. 3 months after Frederick's birthday, his life had changed in ways I never imagined possible. Frank kept his promise. He enrolled Frederick in art classes twice a week, a small workshop downtown, with a patient teacher who understood that Frederick was learning more than just drawing techniques. He was learning to trust, to socialize, to believe he deserved to be there. The first few days were hard. Frederick would come home exhausted, overwhelmed by the people, the conversations, by having to share share space with strangers, but slowly he began to enjoy it. One afternoon, Frederick came home from his class with a different kind of smile. "I talked to someone today," he announced. "Her name is Lucia. She's 70 years old and she draws trees too. She asked me if I wanted to get coffee after class next week." Frank hugged him. "That's wonderful, brother. Are you going to go?" Frederick nodded excitedly. "Yeah, I think so. Lucia is nice. She doesn't ask hard questions. She just talks about trees and birds. I like talking to her." Seeing Frederick make a friend was like watching a plant that had been in the dark for too long finally bloom. Slow, fragile, but beautiful. I kept visiting the house 3 times a week. Sometimes I brought food. Sometimes I just sat with Frederick while he drew. Little by little, we started to rebuild something. It wasn't the mother-son relationship we should have had. It never would be. But it was something. He would tell me about his classes, about Lucia, about the new drawings he was making, and I would listen, really listen, trying to make up for 40 years of lost conversations in a few hours a week, knowing it would never be enough, but trying anyway. One day, Frederick asked me to go with him to the St. Jude Center. "I want to visit Elena," he said. "I want her to see that I'm okay, that her effort was worth it." We went together. The drive felt endless, going back to that place, seeing those walls, those gardens where Frederick had spent 40 years of his life. When we arrived, Elena ran out to greet him. "Frederick, look how good you look." She hugged him. Frederick showed her pictures on his phone, pictures of his room, of his new drawings, of the park, of his art class. "I'm happy, Elena," he said. "For the first time in a long time, I'm happy." Elena cried as she looked at the photos. "I'm so happy for you, Frederick. You deserve this." Then she looked at me. Her expression changed. She became serious. "Mrs. Miller, I hope you understand the gift you've been given. Not everyone gets a second chance. Don't waste it." I nodded, unable to speak, because she was right. This was a gift I didn't deserve but had received anyway, and my only responsibility now was to honor it, to not fail again, to not run away again. When we got back home, Frederick was quiet in the car. "Are you okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, I was just thinking. When I was at the center, I always dreamed of getting out, but I never thought it would actually happen. I thought I would die there, that I would never meet Frank, that I would never have a family again." He turned to me. "But now I have all of that. And even though I lost a lot of years, I have these years now, and that's something." His words broke me and healed me at the same time, because Frederick had chosen forgiveness. He had chosen hope, and I had no right to either. But he gave them to me anyway. In June, 6 months after he left the center, Frederick had his first art exhibition. The workshop teacher organized a small show at a local gallery. He invited all his students to participate. Frederick chose 10 of his best drawings: trees, birds, faces, landscapes. We framed them together, Frank, Laura, Frederick, and me, each of us holding a frame, working as a family. When the night of the opening came, Frederick was nervous. "What if nobody likes my drawings?" Frank put a hand on his shoulder. "They're going to love them, because they're beautiful, and they're yours." The gallery was full of people, strangers looking at art, talking, drinking wine. Frederick's drawings were on a wall in the back, with a small plaque that said Frederick Miller, Series Freedom Found. People stopped. They looked. They read the descriptions. Some asked about the artist. Frederick hid behind us, shy. But when an older man came up and told him, "Your trees have soul. I can feel the patience in every line," Frederick smiled, that smile that was appearing more often now. "Thank you," he replied. I had a lot of time to practice. He sold 3 drawings that night, 3 for $200 each. Frederick couldn't believe it. "Someone paid money for my drawing." Frank laughed. "Yeah, brother, because your art has value. You have value." Frederick put the money in his wallet carefully. "I'm going to save this, to buy something nice for Lucia. She's been very kind to me." That night in the car on the way home, Frederick was quiet, but it was a different kind of silence. It wasn't the silence of fear or sadness. It was the silence of satisfaction, of having accomplished something, of having been seen. The sessions with Inez continued throughout that time. In one of them, she called Frank and me in. "I want to talk to you about Frederick's progress," she said. We sat in her office. "Frederick has made incredible strides in these past months. His adaptation has been better than I expected, but there's something important you need to know." She paused. "Frederick still carries the trauma of abandonment, and he probably always will. There are wounds that don't heal completely. You just learn to live with them." She looked directly at me. "Mrs. Miller, Frederick has forgiven you, but forgiveness doesn't erase the pain. He needs you to understand that." I nodded. Tears began to fall. "I understand," Inez continued. "And Frank, you have done an extraordinary job with your brother, but you can't carry the entire responsibility for his happiness. Frederick needs to learn to be independent, to not rely completely on you, because that would also be another form of prison. A more loving one, but a prison nonetheless." Frank processed her words. "What do you suggest?" Inez smiled. I'm suggesting you consider helping Frederick get his own space, eventually. Not now, but in the future. A small apartment near you, where he can live on his own but with support. That would be the next step in his independence. The idea scared us both, but it also made sense. Frederick needed to fly. He needed to feel that he could stand on his own 2 feet, that he wasn't a burden, that he was capable. We talked to him about it a few weeks later. We told him there was no rush, that he could stay with Frank for as long as he wanted, but that if one day he wanted his own place, we would help him. Frederick looked at us surprised. My own place? Like a normal adult? Frank nodded. Exactly like a normal adult. Because that's what you are, brother. An adult who deserves his own life. Frederick thought about it for several days. Finally, one night at dinner, he spoke. I think I'd like to try that. To have my own place, but close to here. So I can visit you. And so you can visit me. Frank smiled full of pride. Then we'll do it. We'll find the perfect place for you. And so a new chapter began. Looking for apartments. A small one, with good light for drawing, near the park, near the family, a place where Frederick could be truly free. We found the perfect place 3 months later. A 1-bedroom apartment, 3rd floor, big windows, 10 minutes from Frank's house. Frederick loved it from the moment he walked in. I can put my desk here, by the window, so I can see the trees while I draw. We furnished it together. Bed, sofa, table, shelves for his thousands of drawings. The day Frederick moved, we all helped. We carried boxes. We organized. And when everything was done, we sat in his new living room. This is my home, Frederick said, looking around. My very own home. For the first time in 63 years, I have a place that's just mine. I hugged him. You deserve it, my love. You deserve this, and so much more. Frederick hugged me back. Thank you, Mom, for coming back, for trying. I know it hasn't been easy for you either. And he was right. It hadn't been easy. Living with the guilt, the remorse, the knowledge that I had stolen 40 years of my son's life. But I was here, trying, and Frederick had given me that chance. A chance I never deserved, but that he gave me anyway. 6 months after Frederick moved into his apartment, I visited him one afternoon. I knocked on the door. He opened it with a smile. Hi, Mom. Come on in. I went in. His apartment smelled like coffee and paint. He had new drawings hanging on the walls. Want some coffee? He asked. I nodded. We sat in his small living room. Mom, he said after a while, I want you to know something. I'm happy, really. I have my art. I have friends. I have Frank and Laura. And I have you. Not in the way I should have had you, but I have you now, and that counts. I cried, like I always did when Frederick showed me a grace I didn't deserve. I love you, Frederick. I always loved you, even when I didn't show it, even when I abandoned you. You were always in my heart. He nodded. I know, Mom, and I love you too, because you're my mom. And love is complicated sometimes, but it's still love. We sat there, drinking coffee, talking about everything and nothing, about his classes, his plans, about the life he was finally living. As I was leaving, I turned at the door. Frederick, I said, thank you for forgiving me, for giving me this chance. He smiled. Mom, everyone deserves a second chance. You taught me that, even if it wasn't in the way you planned. I closed the door. I walked down the stairs, and for the first time in 40 years, I felt something like peace. It wasn't complete happiness. It never would be, because the past isn't erased. The wounds don't disappear, but I could live with them. I could carry the weight of what I did, and I could try every day to be a little better. For Frederick, for Frank, for the broken family we had rebuilt with imperfect but real pieces, because I learned something in all this painful process. Love without responsibility is abandonment. Love without action is just empty words, and love that hides instead of confronting destroys. But I also learned that it's never too late to start over, to ask for forgiveness, to try, even if redemption doesn't erase the damage, even if regret doesn't bring back the lost time, because in the end, all we have is today, and what we do with the chances that life against all odds decides to give us.